Hello,
we are
we are
from
from
Group
Group 9. We will be presenting 5 questions of economics. First of all, we would like to introduce ourselves.
I'm Zheng Xuanyu.
I'm Jian.
I'm Ling Jia.
I'm Wu Jiazhen.
I'm Xu Jiahui.
So, let's begin our presentation.
Hello, I'm Guanyi Zheng Xuanyu. Before we start, here is a work distribution, and everyone is responsible for one question. First question is talking about the issue that President Trump ordered the imposition of tariff on Chinese product. And question 1. Use a diagram to explain why USA became the importer of Chinese products under WTO's free trade agreement. We know that China has cheaper labor in the world, whereas in America, the salary is higher than China. Most of their works are related to technology and service, and China is responsible for producing the works in process and components. It is the products that America needed from other countries. So under WTO free trade agreement, China produces cheaper items and sells them to the world, and America buys the item from China because of their higher price equilibrium. And question 2 is, use another diagram to show how President Trump's tariff policy would affect USA imports of Chinese products. If Trump ordered the imposition of tariffs on Chinese products, the price will lie between free trade and without trade. The quantity of imports will be smaller than the quantity with free trade. And question 3. Do you agree with those economics? Explain your arguments. I agree with those economics that tariff would do more harm than good to the American economy because it would have deadweight loss, and the price will increase and the quantity will decrease. And I will use a graph to support my point of view. When there are no tariffs, the price people pay in America in the world price. Above the price is consumer surplus, which was A, B, C, D, E, and F. And below the price is producer surplus, which is G. If now there is an imposition of tariff, the price will increase. The consumer surplus is in area A and B, and the producer surplus is C and G. There will be a deadweight loss D, E, F under the circumstance. Also, the price will increase and the quantity decrease. Therefore, the tariffs will do more harm than good.
Hi, my name is Chen Ting'an, and now I'm going to answer the question 2, the part of the Pigouvian text. So question 1 is, what is the definition of a socially negative externality? Please give an example of a socially negative externality. My answer is, the definition of a negative externality relates to situations in which people incur a part of the cost involved with the production of a good without having any control over the production choices linked to that good's creation. For example, air pollution may be caused by factories which release harmful gases into the atmosphere. Some of the gases include carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. The destructive gases cause damage to crops, buildings, and human health, and they also affect the global climate. Question 2. Use a diagram to show how Pigouvian taxes shift the cost from society to the producers of this socially harmful externality. At the point Q1, the market is efficient and the supply meets demand. However, The market is not socially efficient because the cost to others is not accounted for. To compensate for the negative effect of an externality, the tax is imposed, raising the price from P1 to P2. The tax raises the price, and the consumer reduces the quantity demanded from Q1 to Q2. And this red line is the tax that government will get from the companies. So we can see Q2 is a socially efficient quantity, and the P2 is socially efficient price. The third one is use another diagram to explain why P2B taxes discourage behaviors that create this negative externality. Negative externality will cause a daily loss in the red triangle. So, the government can play a role in reducing negative externality by taxing goods when their production generates spillover cost. This taxation effectively increases the cost of producing such goods. It creates the true cost of producing the good and survive. The business then decides whether the extra cost is worth it or not. The last question is, use another diagram to explain why P2B taxes can also create more efficiency in an economy, especially when the tax covers the cost of an external damage. In this diagram, the yellow rectangle is the revenues of the P2B tax. In situations where it doesn't, it raises revenues to help lose effect by the externality. For example, the gasoline tax reduced driving while funding highway maintenance. And also, the government can use the money from the P2B tax to do something beneficial to all people in the city.
Hi, I'm 企一甲林家人. Today I'm going to talk about the Freerider Problem in public goods, which cause market failure. The first question is the two characteristics required for a pure public good. First is pure public good is not excludable, and the second is not rival in consumption. For example, national defense and public security. And the second question, if a good match only one of two characteristics, which is called impure public good. And there are two impure public goods, which are common resource and club goods respectively. And for common resource, it's not excludable and rival in consumption. For example, deer in the forest or fish in the ocean. As for club goods, they are excludable and not rival in consumption. For example, cable TV. So, why Freerider Problem is common with public goods? It's because public goods are not excludable, that they are available to everyone free of charge. So, people have an incentive to be free riders. So, question 4, I'm going to explain why Freerider Problem will lead to under provision of a public good or service and this cause market failure. The reason is as public good is non-excludable, there is an incentive to be a free rider, and people benefit from the public good or service but do not need to pay for them. This prevents private market from supplying an efficient quantity, so this leads to under provision and cause market failure. Question 5. There are two solutions to the free rider problem. First is charge a fee from user. And second is government can collect tax to provide the public good if the total benefit of a public good exceeds its cost.
Next, I'm going to talk about question 4. DRM market is considered as a perfectly competitive market. There are many competitors in the market. In 1996, Japanese DRM manufacturing company Fujitsu has several factories in the world. All factories of Fujitsu operated independently and sought for maximizing their own profits. In that year, market price of DRM fell sharply. Both factories had losses. Fujitsu decided to permanently close its factory in Durham, United Kingdom, but temporarily continue its production at a factory in Gresham, USA. So, is Fujitsu's decision of continuing Gresham factory a short run or long run decision? Is Fujitsu's decision of closing Durham factory a short run or long run decision? As we know, the decision is made permanently, so it's a long run decision for closing factory in Durham. However, its decision in Gresham is a short run decision because it only continued temporarily. But maybe the companies will make decision like closing it in the future. So it's just a short run decision. Next is I'm going to use a diagram including various cost curves to show how Gresham factory chose the optimal quantity of output at the market price. And the same diagram shows the situation where Gresham factory was temporarily continued even though there was a loss. So the optimal quantity happens when marginal revenue equals marginal cost, because this is the profit maximization point. And the marginal revenue is the red line shown in the graph, and the marginal cost is the green line. And the profit maximization point is this red point. So this is the optimal quantity. And according to the question, it has losses. So its marginal revenue has to be lower than its average total cost. So as you can see, the average total cost is the blue line and the marginal revenue is under it. So there is a loss, which is the pink area. You can see the picture. And why it continued? Because its marginal revenue is higher than its average total cost. So in the short run, you don't have to consider fixed cost because it is sunk cost. And it doesn't matter when you make the decision to continue to shut down in the short run. So this is the graph for the decision in Gresham. And next, I'm going to use another diagram including various cost curves to show how Durham factory chose the quantity of output at the market price. And the same diagram shows the situation where Durham factory was permanently closed when there was a loss. So as you can see, it's still the same. The optimal quantity, it happens when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So marginal revenue is this red line, and marginal cost is still the green line. And the optimal, the profit maximization point is here. So the optimal quantity is here. And according to the question, it has losses. So its marginal cost has to be lower than its average total cost. So there's a loss, which is the pink area. However, the difference is in the long run, if its marginal cost can cover its total cost, then the companies may choose to exit the market. So this is the end of my part.
So I will be responsible for answering question number 5. My name is Cynthia Kusuma or Xu Jiahui with the student ID 111305040. So the case is about an electric company is a classic example of a natural monopoly. Taipower Company has been a monopoly in selling electricity to Taiwanese consumers for 70 years. Taiwan recently passed an amendment to its Electricity Act that now allows other suppliers of traditional energy to sell electricity directly to consumers, effectively ending Taipower's 70 years of the sector monopoly. First of all, we are going to discuss what is monopoly. Monopoly is a single firm or a single seller in a market. So meaning that they have market powers and they are price makers. So monopolies rise due to barriers to entry the market, meaning that there are barriers that causes other firms cannot enter the market and compete with the monopoly. There are 3 types of barriers to enter the market. The first one is monopoly resources, government regulations, and the last one is a natural monopoly. So we are going to discuss the third type of barrier. So the barrier to entry into the market arises due to the efficient production process of a single firm. This is what we call as a natural monopoly. Natural monopoly is a single firm that can produce the entire market queue at a lower cost than could several firms. This arises when there are economies of scale over the relevant range of output. And as we have learned before, that when there are economies of scale, long-run AC curve will be downward sloping. So the ATC slopes downward due to the huge fixed costs and small marginal costs. The example of a natural monopoly is the distribution of water, electricity, and etc. So let us see the cost curves for natural monopoly. So the ATC, average total cost curve of a natural monopoly, is falling due to the fact that the marginal cost is smaller to the ATC. It means that the cost of the last additional output is going to pull the ATC downward. Meanwhile, the marginal cost is constant or horizontal, so it doesn't cross the ATC, as we know that when the MC curve is rising, it will eventually cross the ATC, which causes the ATC to rise. As natural monopolies are on economies of scales, meaning that the long-run ATC curve is going to downward sloping, so the MC curve should be horizontal, so it doesn't cross the ATC. Meanwhile, the AVC, average variable cost, will be equals to marginal cost since both of the curves are constant. And as we know that marginal cost only depends on the variable cost. Here are the explanations to support this. Firstly, we know that the marginal cost function is the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. And as we know that total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost, and we know that the fixed cost is not changed despite the changes in the quantity. So the derivative will be 0, leaving us with the change in variable cost divided by the change in quantity. And if the marginal cost function is constant, and if we put it into integral in order to get the function of total cost, we will get K times Q plus the big K. The big K is the fixed cost Meanwhile, the K times Q is the function of the variable cost. So, for the AVC function, it will be
the variable cost
divided by the quantity, and
variable cost
function is K times Q divided by Q, which is leaving us with the K, or the constant. So we can see that the AVC function will be the same as the MC function. So, why is an electric company such as Tide Power Company a natural monopoly? So firstly, it requires extremely high equipment costs such as power generation and power lines, or we can also say that there is a huge fixed cost to enter the market, meaning that it might keep new producers out of the market. Secondly, the cost of each additional unit of electricity provided to new consumer is relatively low or can be neglected, meaning that the marginal cost is constant, or the curve is horizontal, as what is shown before on the graph. Thirdly, the more units being sold, the more fixed costs can be spread or divided. As a result, the average total cost of providing electricity decreases as the number of the customers rises. So, as we know that average total cost is total cost divided by quantity, and due to the fact that in natural monopoly the marginal cost and the average variable cost is relatively constant, so it left us with the fixed cost divided by the quantity. So meaning that if the number of the customer rises, the fixed costs can be divided more, and it causes the average total cost to be decreased as the number of quantity rises. And the third one is having two electric companies split electricity production, each with its own power source and power lines, will lead to a higher or near doubling of costs. This is due to the fact that if there are two electric companies that run together, each of them is going to have their own power source and power lines, and this will cause doubling costs in the market. Thus, the ATC of providing electricity is lowest if a single firm serves the entire market. So, this is the illustration for the fourth point. So, for example, you live in a small town where 1,000 homes need electricity, and you can see that if only one firm serves the entire 1,000 homes, the ATC is only $50. But if there are two firms which supply the market with 500 for each, it will lead to a higher ATC, which is $80. So, in conclusion, we can see that ATC is lower when one firm services all 1,000 homes than when two firms each service 500 homes. So, what is the monopoly profit maximization? So, as we have known, despite the types of the markets, the profit maximizing quantity is when the marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. So we can see from the graph, the marginal cost crosses the marginal revenue at this point, and through this point we can find the profit maximizing output, which is the QM. And in monopoly cases, to find the P, the price, we need to find it on the demand curve from the profit maximizing quantity. So from the profit maximizing quantity, we try to reach out to the demand curve here. This is the demand curve. So this is the point where the monopoly will charge its customers, which is PM. And as we have learned, the profit will be the price minus the average total cost times the quantity. Through the same way, from profit maximizing quantity, we can reach out to the point of ATC here. And since the price is higher than the ATC, meaning that the monopoly will make profit, so this is the area of the profit, which is the price charged by monopoly minus the ATC times the profit maximizing output by the monopoly. So what will happen to the equilibrium when the electricity market in Taiwan becomes perfectly competitive? Here is the new equilibrium. First of all, as we know that in perfectly competitive market, the price will be equal to marginal revenue and equal to the marginal cost, which will cause efficiency in the market because it maximizes the total surplus due to the fact that for each additional unit, the value to the buyers will be the same as the seller's cost of production. So the MC curve is here, and the perfectly competitive price will be the same as the MC. And as we know that in perfectly competitive market, the supply curve will be the same as the marginal cost curve. And to find the market equilibrium, we need to find where the demand curve crosses the supply curve to each other. So we can find this is the demand curve and this is the supply curve, and they are going to cross at this point. So the market equilibrium will lead to the socially efficient output, so-called QC here. And this is the perfectly competitive equilibrium. So let us see the changes in equilibrium when the market for electricity in Taiwan changes from monopoly to perfectly competitive. So as we can see from the first graph provided for the monopoly cases, when Taiwan Power Company was given the monopoly in the market of electricity, the equilibrium will be EM, which is PM and QM. And when other suppliers of traditional energy are allowed to sell electricity directly to Taiwanese consumers, the electricity market in Taiwan becomes perfectly competitive, and the equilibrium will be EC, which is PZ, equals to NC, and QC. So as we can see, the price charged by monopoly is higher than the price when the market becomes perfectly competitive. Quantity supplied by monopoly is smaller than quantity supplied when the market becomes perfectly competitive. So, in details, here is the explanation. According to marginal revenue equals to marginal cost, the monopoly is going to produce at QM. And at the QM, the monopoly is going to charge for PM. As what I've explained before, to find the price of monopoly, we need to find it on the D curve. And in perfectly competitive market, the supply curve is the MC curve, and we need to find the equilibrium when the demand curve crosses the supply curve, which is at here. The perfectly competitive equilibrium will be PZ and QC. So as we can see, the price charged by monopoly is higher than price of perfectly competitive market because monopoly charges higher than the marginal cost. And the quantity, the monopoly, is smaller than the quantity in perfectly competitive market because monopoly doesn't produce a socially efficient optimum quantity, or it could have increased the total surplus with a larger quantity. So, in conclusion, electricity price will be lower and electricity quantity will be larger in Taiwan as the electricity market in Taiwan will move from monopoly to perfect competition. So that's all for question number 5. Thank you for listening to my presentations. I hope that my explanation can help you understand more about natural monopoly. Thank you.
Thank you for listening and Happy New Year!